Alright, so first of all, I'm gonna go ahead and have my webcam off today because I'm feeling a little under the weather and all the lights I think will make my headache worse, so I'm just gonna forego the webcam today. I do apologize for that, but hopefully it's understandable why. But that's okay, we can still do a pretty good game development stream with that off. Alright, so we're gonna be working more on the card game. And this project is kind of like the old card game called Concentration or Memory. And there's going to be a bunch of cards out on the board, and each one will have a hidden image on them. And users or viewers on the Twitch stream will have to guess which cards have the same image. So here I went ahead and colored them with the image. These will normally be hidden. So I don't know, you would say A1 and D1 both is the guess, and then if you guess correctly, you'd get some points. If you guess incorrectly, then the cards are just hidden again and in the same spot, so you have to kind of try to remember where revealed tiles have appeared. Obviously ours will be Twitch integrated, so each of the images will be, for example, user avatars, and also each user will be able to accumulate points, and then they can use those points to spend them to change the rules of the game or have some other fun effects like that. So far, we basically just got the tiles revealed, and then we have this command, so I can... This is like emulating the actual Twitch chat, so if I type guess A1, A2, then it would actually put that into the game, and we can see here. So here, this entity is the data for the guess, so it says it has the tile 0 and 4, and then if I went ahead and guessed again, it would overwrite that. It did. And yeah, the old one is gone now, so that's mostly what we were... Yesterday we pretty much just did a whole bunch of testing to make sure that system worked. Well, I guess it wasn't yesterday, it was a week ago. Oh yeah, I hope everybody had a good Thanksgiving if you, obviously if you celebrate that. And if not, I hope you all had just a great week. But, okay, so that's that. And as far as I know, we didn't start any other project. It was just, we tested a bunch of use cases of this system. And so the next step is to, I think, work on the rest of the gameplay loop. So we need to do... So how it'll work is the game will have a timer for the guess phase, and then once the timer runs out, it will just randomly choose a guess to reveal, and every user that made that guess will either get or won't get points. So I'll need to create that timer system. Alright, so basically we need to kind of decide how the flow of the game will work, which is always a little bit interesting because game flow in a data-oriented game is handled differently than in a standard game. In a standard game, you might just have like a phase variable that would have an enumeration for the phase of the game. In a data-oriented type game, it's usually better to have a component that says, like, I don't know, guesses are active, and then anything that has to do with that would just look to see if that component exists. And then you'd have some other object that looks for times that the phase should change, or conditions where the phase should change, and then either creates or destroys those command entities. So I think that's how we're going to do it here. So let's see. I have these state components, so I'll continue to use this file. Okay, so I guess let's just have something here that's, I don't know, accepting guesses. Let's tag it with like phase so that it's obvious that it's a phase component. And now, okay, so now what would happen is the tile guess verifier would only verify a guess if that component is active, and if it's not active, it should kind of just throw out that entity, destroy it. So how would we do that? Let me think. So one thing I could do is just fire singleton for update, which just tells the system that we need to have some entity with this component on it for this system to run. And if you really, behind the scenes, all this does is just make a query for this component, but it's kind of just easier, obviously, just to call this function. So we can do that, and then so now obviously this system will only run when this component is active. So we want to have some other system that runs when this component doesn't exist that would just throw out any received guesses. Another way that we could handle it is just that the guess command handler would just not even create this entity, but then it would have to have like knowledge if that state exists. So I'm not sure what would be easier to do. I think I'll go ahead and just make a system that will delete guesses if we don't need them. So let's say out of phase guess deleter. And basically all the system will do is take I guess it won't really take anything. I'll just look for any tile guess. Oh wait, I'm not using the right namespace. Okay, yeah, I'll take any tile guess and delete it if no entity with that guess phase exists. So let's see. Game logic for systems. Okay, and this won't be a mono behavior. Actually, it will be. Well, we could have it either a component system or a job component system. I don't think it makes much difference. Okay, and then I'll need to tell it to implement that system. And we'll also override the onCreate function. Okay, so we're going to need a couple entities, or a couple queries here. We'll basically just need a query for any tile guess entity. So this will be guess query, and then equals get entity query. So really we only care, like we don't really care if the guess has been verified or not. We just want to get rid of anyone. Yeah, I guess this will be fine for now. Actually, technically, let's see. So the phase, because I'm trying to figure out the best way to describe this. So We don't want to, we want to like not accept new guesses. But just because we're not accepting new guesses, we might not want to delete guesses that are in the system because we need to know the guesses of all users. Yeah, so let me see. Well, I guess this can just delete any unverified guess, and then yeah, we can just deal with deleting verified guess at some point. Oh, what is the right? Oh, I know what. I was expecting tile guess to come up in the IntelliSense, but it's because I'm not using the right namespace. Okay, so now actually we need to do this a little different because we're going to be a little bit more specific here. So we need to get entity query descriptions, and we want them to have a component type. Yeah, read-only is fine of tile guess, but we don't want it to have. Oh, okay. Oh, I see what's going on there. We want it to have no verified component because any verified tile guess will want to just leave in memory and it will be cleaned up by some other component or some other system. Okay, and then yeah, we'll require for update because really this will only need to run if there's some guess to delete. Okay, and then we also only want this to run when there's no entity with the phase accepting guess command. Or it's not really a command, it's more of a component. So we'll also just require for update some new entity query. Oh wait, how would this work? Because if this entity works, we don't want it to run, so I think the more proper way to do this would actually be to have a component that would tell the system to run, because you can't really have a query look for no entities. Yeah, so yeah, I didn't think that through all the way. Okay, so yeah, we have a couple options here. I can either have another state component that just says, I don't know, delete all incoming guesses, and it would cause this system to run, which is fine. But obviously it is a little bit wasteful because we could also just have this not create anything if it's in the right or out of phase, but that requires us to have knowledge of it, so I'm not sure. I think the least buggy way to do it will be to have this guess deleter. I wonder if there's another way to do this. I've never tried to have a system run when another system doesn't run, so I could just have this class do both. But I guess they're not mutually exclusive, so I'm not sure. Okay. I think the best way is also just to create another state component. Yeah, so yeah, we'll just have this other component, and I'll need to remember. Well, I guess this does kind of decouple this, so that way we can have this incoming guesses system running anytime we want. But obviously, there'll be an issue if both of these components exist. So in that case, let's see. Date in group. I always forget to set this, so I'll go ahead and do it now. So I want this to run in the simulation system group, which is kind of like update for mono behaviors. And what made me think of this is I want this to run after the tile guess verifier, because then at least if both components somehow exist, which never should happen, any verified guesses would have already been verified by the tile guess verifier before the system tries to delete them. Actually, that might not be true because of the way this happens asynchronously. So probably what happened is that they just get deleted anyway, but I'm not going to worry about it too much because, like I said, these phase components should never both exist. I feel like there should be... I need to look that up. I feel like there's a better way to handle that, but I'm not sure what it is. Anyway, I'll research that off stream and can look at that later on. Oh, that kind of reminds me. There was a big new version of Unity over the weekend, 2018.3, which is the last big one of the year. It has some cool features. Unfortunately, when I tried to update one of my projects to it, there was a fatal bug that wouldn't even let me start up the game, so I haven't had time to debug it. It's something to do with the burst compiler, so that's why I'm not using the newest version today, if anybody's wondering. Alright, so what we do... Basically, I just need to delete all these components. We could just run it in post-update commands. Destroy entity. And then we can pass the guess query to it, which means it would destroy every entity that's in this query. And maybe that's what I want to do, but I think I might want to wait and do that in the... Let's see. Yeah, the initialization entity command system. So which would happen at the beginning of the next frame. I don't know if it really makes much difference, but I guess one good thing if that happens, then it would run, and I had it run before the tile guess verifier, then there wouldn't be any collisions. Because this would just delete all the queries before the verifier actually ran. Or, sorry, delete all the guesses. But, I don't really think... Yeah, it's just going to add a bottleneck here in the middle of the update phase, which is a bit awkward and slow, so I don't think I'll leave that there. Okay, so I just need to get a handle on this buffer system. Entity, command, buffer system. And I just gotta call buffer system dot create command buffer. Oh, that's not what I thought I clicked on. That create command buffer dot destroy entity guess query. Okay, and since this is running actually in the component system, I don't need to like add any job handle because it doesn't have to wait for any jobs to complete. I think this is fine. For some reason this is giving me... Yeah, doing it with the query. I wonder, like, when you do the query, does it, like, immediately delete the entity? Or does it store the query and then when you rewind or Yeah, the command buffer does it then look at the query then and sees what entities are inside of it. Okay, I was maybe hoping I'd see some data there. I'm not sure what would happen. Well, I'm not sure it really matters. But I guess I'm kind of interested to see. I wonder how I can test that. I guess what I do is let's just see. So this will run, and then I'm gonna have, I don't know, a tile guess creator. And I'm just gonna have this create an entity after this out of phase guess deleter runs, and I'm gonna see if there's any error, like when it gets deleted. I don't know. I wonder, it's gonna be kind of difficult to see. Oh. Okay. It was just reloading there. What I'm also going to do here, just for testing purposes, I'm going to have it destroy this phase delete incoming guesses object, which I guess means I need to store the command buffer since I'm going to call it twice. Buffer dot destroy entity, so yeah, I'll pass the query, and I want to destroy this phase. Okay, and I'm gonna do a bit of, it's not really hacky, but I'm gonna get the singleton entity connected to this phase delete incoming guesses component. I guess I could also just remove the component, that's probably better. Oops. Okay, so now it will delete this component from the singleton entity that has this component. So that way this will only run once, and then I want some other system. Well, I guess I could do it in the same system. So post update commands, create entity. And then post update commands, add component, new tile guess, and I'm just gonna give it some value that I can recognize. Let's just put 12 and everything. Okay, so now what's happening here is, okay, so I'm creating a command buffer which is going to run on the begin initialization phase, which is which is basically at the beginning of the next frame. And in that command buffer, I'm going to destroy every entity in this guess query, and then remove this component from the entity that contains it. So that way, this system won't run again the next frame. And then I'm going to, in the post update commands, which run immediately after on update function, it will create an entity and then add this component to it. And the reason I want to do that is because I want to see if the query in the command buffer is stored immediately when you call or when you send it to the command buffer, or if it looks at the query when the command buffer rewinds everything, which would be on the beginning of the next frame. So basically, we know it's the first if this entity still exists after I run this, and it's the second option if this entity is deleted. So now the only other thing I need to do is, let's see, on the board creator, I need to just create some entity with that delete guesses command. Should be system phase. Oh wait, no, it's not systems. It's components dot delete incoming guesses. And I'm going to go ahead and delete this tile guess creator test system because I'm not going to use it. I'm kind of interested in the results of this. Okay, so I don't think anything's happened because there's no guess in the system yet, so let's just add one. Okay, that's interesting. So there's an empty entity that still exists, so what happened there? I don't see any other guess entities. Huh. So what happened there? Why did it create an empty entity? Is it just because I didn't pass an archetype here? Let's see, so if I do that, is that okay? Or do I have to manager.create archetype? And then set component. I guess I'll make sure this isn't the issue. I'm not sure where that empty component is coming from. Okay, so yeah, so we can see here that there's no entities that have the what's the right word, that have the tile guess component. And now there's just an empty entity without anything. It's a bit strange. It did delete. Oh, I wonder. Oh, okay. This is the empty entity without any component, because I'm just removing the component and not deleting the entity. So if I let's just go back to deleting the entity, or another. Yeah, let's just delete this because I need to. We'll clean that up later, but. Yeah, because what was happening is I was deleting the only component on that entity, so obviously it's going to be empty then. Guess, oops, that's not how you spell it. Okay, so now after it runs, yeah, there's not any tile guesses. So I can only assume that the guess query is executed when the command buffer rewinds. So that means that any guess that is created anytime during this frame would be destroyed. Is that what I want to happen, or Well, I guess that kind of makes sense. Anyway, I'm probably overthinking things, but I did kind of want to figure out that question because I haven't actually looked into that. Yeah, if I didn't want that to happen, I could just look in the query myself and tell it to destroy each entity currently in the query. Which I might do, but I don't think it's really necessary right now, so anyway, I wanted to test that out. Now, I'm going to have a lot of these phase components, and since all of them will just exist on one entity, I kind of like to create like a static entity that's just for phase components. That way there doesn't need to be a ton of chunks just with singleton or components on them. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm trying to think. Let's just create phase singleton bootstrap, and so you can tag certain systems to run at the beginning of your or when your game starts up. Gosh, I can't spell well and talk at the same time apparently. So I want to tell this basically just to create an entity, and then we'll store it in a static variable. In fact, let's just rename this to phase singleton entity. And then I'll just have a public static read only entity. Oh yeah, I'm not using the entity's namespace yet. Okay, so I need to figure out that code for the static function. I forget what it is. Or for the bootstrap function. Let's see. Doesn't really show up. Okay. Let me look this up, I guess. It would be something like, I don't know, Unity entities, bootstrap. What are these little tags called that you... Something like that. Attribute? Yeah, attribute. Let's see. That's not what I want. This is telling me how to like create my own world. I know there's another way to do it, but I forget what it's called. Okay, let me look it up in another project real quick. Okay, yeah. Okay, so it's runtime initialization on load method. So kind of a mouthful. Alright, and then there's a bunch of different types here you can set. But I just want it to run before... Actually... It doesn't really make much difference, so before scene load is fine. And okay, so basically I'm just going to create an entity. So oh, I'm missing a T up there. So this is world.active create, or I guess I gotta call it entity manager, create entity, and that's about it. What's it not like? Oh, is it because I had this tagged read only? No. Cannot be. Oh, yeah, I shouldn't put this at the beginning. Okay. Now will it work? I don't know if it will work with read only because, yeah, you can only set those during constructors. So I could do something like this. And then set to private. Okay, so yeah, now anybody can get this, but only I can set it. Okay, so or only this class can set it. Okay, and then what we do is the board creator object. Instead of creating two separate entities, we would just call add component, and then we would have the phase singleton entity, and then pass the component. I guess I wouldn't have to do it like that. I could just plug it into the method that way. Now, is it saying... Oh, I didn't spell it right. Okay, and now I kind of want to change this to, I don't know, command singleton entity, because it's more like... I don't know, it probably doesn't make much difference, but I always think about the naming of my systems a little bit too much. Okay, and now I'll do the same thing down here. Oh, except yeah, I want to have a different tag. Or not tag, but component type. So now both of these components will exist on this entity, which means I won't have to have two chunks just for a single component type. It's really not that big of a deal, but I think later on we're going to have a whole lot of different phase components, so we'll probably end up saving some memory. Let me see. So then this out of phase guest deleter, I don't want to delete this entity. Well, actually, I don't want to delete it at all. Oh wait, I already... Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. I already deleted the line that removed this component, so I'm good. Alright, so let's make sure that works real quick. Okay, yeah, we can see entity 0, which is our singleton, has both of these components on it, instead of having two different entities just with a single component. And now if I, let's clear selection, if I type guess A1, A2, yeah, it should just delete the guess, and we can see that there's no chunk with tile guest data in it, so it was deleted immediately. Let's just try it one more time. Yeah, and it's not there. Okay, so I just wanted to make sure. But then if I remove this line, which this is the wrong system for it anyway, but then when I type a guess, it should stay in the entities, which it does. Yeah, we see the tile guess there. And also I can have multiple guesses because the verifier system isn't running. So if I came in and added phase accepting guesses to that command singleton entity, then I think the tile verifier would run. And then I could only have one guess per user. Oh, that wouldn't work. Okay, so now there's one guess. And if I make another guess, it should delete that one and replace it with this new one. Yeah, which there's still only one guess, so. Okay, so now we know that the tile verifier is running. Yeah, which it is. Okay, so I got, oh, okay, I think this error always comes up when you look at the entity debugger and change the entities that are currently selected, so I'm not worried about that. All right. So now we have the beginnings of the game's flow setup. So basically when the game starts, there probably is going to be like some introduction, and then it will like shuffle the cards and everything. So there'll be some kind of animation phase, but I'm not going to worry about that now. So I think right now when the game starts, I'm just going to have it start immediately in the phase accepting guesses. So I kind of want to, well, I guess this whole class is probably going to be temporary because it also just creates the board immediately. So I'll just leave this in. But I think I'm gonna get rid of this, so now the tile faces will be hidden graphically. Yeah, so now all the tiles are gray. Okay, so now what do we need to do? I guess we need to have the timer. And then when the timer is out, the system will pick a guess to reveal. Okay, so let's see. I guess technically that timer is a state component, but it feels different because it's more like a gameplay construct instead of a flow. So I think I'll put it in the board components. Now for the timer, there's two ways you can represent timers. You can either represent it as like time left or the start time and period. Usually for entities, I do it as a start time and period so that you don't have to change the data so often. You kind of just read it, and then when the actual game time is past the start time, then you can what am I trying to say? You can, I guess, execute whatever happens when the timer is finished. The problem about that is that if you pause the game, then the timer might stop, and then you have to somehow change like the start time based on how long the game is paused or whatever. There's a couple ways you can get around that. So I guess this will be a state. I think I'm gonna just have a game time structure. Actually, this doesn't even need to be a component, I don't think, because yeah, we can just pass it as needed to jobs. So what would I put this as? It's gonna be just another class that's in the game logic database that anything can grab a hold of. Let's just create something. I'll just call it the game state. And it won't be a mono behavior, it will just be a normal old class. Let's put it in the core. Namespace. And oh yeah, it always has to reload whenever you change the namespace. Fair enough. And I'm just gonna have, I don't know, I guess game time and public float delta time. And so the game time, we'll just increment that every frame. And that way, if we pause the game, we can just stop updating game time and we won't have to worry about updating any timers that we have. I don't even know if we'll be able to pause in this game, but I think it's a good idea to do that just in case. Okay, so I'm going to need some system to initialize this and also update the game time. What was the system that didn't I have like a main random sequence? Oh yeah, that's random sequence initializer. Oh, yeah, it keeps giving me the wrong system. Okay, so I had a random sequences object. Yeah, so I was just thinking, how did I create that? But let's see. Okay. So this will be just a component system. If I can find the right keys. Alright, and so basically every update, well first we need to get a reference to the game time object. Oh, I call it the game state. Okay, well this is fine, I guess. Should I rename this? Well, no, because it's gonna create the time, so it's fine. Or it's gonna update the time. Okay, so first of all, the game state, let's need to create. I'm gonna do that. Create a new instance of it, and then I need to add it to the game logic database. So that other classes can get a handle on it. And then on update, we just set the delta time to Unity's delta time, and then the game time we just increment. So yeah, really right now it's not really very helpful, but if we ever pause the game, like I said, then we would tell this, or basically just stop updating game time until we resume. And that way we don't have to worry about our timers getting out of sync with the actual like game logic. Okay, so this really is done, but I'll tell it to update in group. I guess initialization. That way, yeah, I'll have to remember that if any system in the initialization system group needs the game time, it should update afterwards. Okay, so anyway, what else? Oh yeah, so now I need to go back and do the guest timer. So the state component. So really all this will do is construct. And we'll have a field here for the start time and also the period. Okay, so this would start, I guess, whenever we create, whenever the phase starts. And right now, that happens. But we don't really know in the final game how this is going to happen. I just force it to happen in this board creator class, which is kind of temporary. So I guess I'll just stick with that. We'll just create another entity for the timer. Great. Oh, there it goes. I didn't think it was showing up for some reason. And the only component we need to be on it is the guest timer. Oh, there's an extra period in there. Oh, it's complaining because I already used the E there. So let's just call this, I don't know, timer entity. And then we need to set the component. Okay, so start time. Well, let's just say it starts at 0. Really, we need to get the game time object and check it, what the current time is, but we always know this is going to run the first frame, so. Let's say the guest period lasts, I don't know, let's do 5 seconds. That's kind of short, but for testing it might be nice. Okay, so now I'm going to need some system that watches for the guest timer to complete, and then we'll do something based on that. Okay, so guest timer watcher. Systems. Okay, I don't think this needs to be a job component system. We don't really want this to have too much logic in it. It will just watch to see if the timer's up, and if it is, then it will switch out some of the phase components. Okay, and when do I want this to run? Do I want it to run? I guess it should run in the initialization phase, because probably phase components should pretty much only change in the initialization phase. Oop, I'm sorry about that. Let's see. Okay, and since this will use the game time, I want it to update after. I forgot the type of tag there. It should run after the game time manager. So that way we're sure that the game time has been updated already. Oh yeah, I can get rid of those. So now it wants me to implement the abstract class, which I'm more than happy to do. And then on create, we need to first get a handle on the game state object, which has the current time. Game logic database, get game state. Okay, and So on update, I guess, well, there won't ever be more than one guest timer, would there? I guess the only reason is if we had more than one board active, but that doesn't really make any sense. That would be pretty chaotic. So I can maybe just treat it as a singleton, but I don't know. I think I usually feel better just managing the queries myself, so let's just do that. Okay, so we really just need, let's not use type of, let's use component type, read only, guest timer. Okay, so this query is basically just going to look for entities with a guest timer component, and yeah, we might as well require for update. Okay, so on update, first we need to get the guest timer data. So timers equals timer query get, or I guess it's 2 component data array. Doesn't it need the allocation? Oh, right. It's 2 component data array, not 2 component array. Yeah, so now it needs the allocator type, which we will set as temp job. So even though we really only need it, we could set it temporary, but behind the scenes Unity uses jobs to fill out this data. That's why you have to put a temp job in there. Alright, so then we'll just search through each timer. And really there's never going to be more than one timer, but it just feels better to handle them to me. So yeah, if the start time plus the period is greater than or equal to the current time, then we'd want to transition to the next phase. Okay. Now this part, I'm always not really sure how to handle it exactly, because on one hand, it feels like you should have another class that handles starting up a phase, but you also need some class that handles exiting this phase. So you could like spawn an event here, and then something would listen to the event and then start up the next phase. That's one way to do it. But I think this game is simple enough, and we're pretty much always just going to go straight from guessing to revealing, that I think we can just do it all here. Okay, so I'm gonna need to, like I said, I only want to change, well, I guess I was gonna say, I only want to change phases in the initialization system group. So I wonder, should I use post update commands here to do it now, or should I wait and use a command buffer? I think post update commands will be fine, and then if anything is really sensitive to the changes in phases, then I need to tell it to run like either before or after this. Could even create another system group that runs inside the initialization system group that's just for phase transitioners, but that might be getting a little ahead of myself, so we'll wait until that's actually needed. Let's see. So what do we do here? First we need to... Okay. So yeah, I want to first delete incoming guesses, so we'll create this object. And then I also want to stop accepting new guesses, so I'll need to... Let's this up a little bit. So I'll need to remove this component, and then I'll also need to add whatever components would set up the next phase. Okay, so first, I think just make this a little easier. What did I call it? Singleton. Oh yeah, the command singleton. I'll just go ahead and reference that here. And then in post update commands, I'll first remove a component, so it's phase dot accepting guesses, and then also add the component to delete new guesses. Okay, and then whatever else I need to do to handle the next phase, which would basically we'll just need to add some other phase component that tells another system to run to choose a random verified guess. And then I'd probably have to play some animation in the final game, but we won't do that yet. So I'm gonna go ahead and test what I've done so far. Okay, so it's complaining, oh, because I forgot to dispose of this timer array. Okay, so now Unity's probably gonna complain to me about that forever, because it doesn't remove data like that. Yeah, so it's gonna keep on saying that there's unallocated native arrays in memory. So yeah, I'm just gonna restart it real quick so I don't have to deal with that. Alright, should be almost done. Oh yeah, and there was a new version of 2019.2, but I didn't bother downloading it because I'm gonna probably switch everything to 0.3 whenever I can fix that bug. But anyway, so now we can go ahead and press play and just watch. Okay, so yeah, the guest timer. Oh, it already switched to the next phase. Okay, I was too slow because it already set the delete incoming messages to true. Or wait, it was like that from the start. Okay, so let's see. Oh, yeah, this is wrong. So this should be less than or equal, because it's once the game time has surpassed this time, we want to trigger this. Also, I should make sure this doesn't run more than once, so let's break. And also, I probably need to destroy the timer query, don't I? So... let's see. I guess I can just add, delete, or destroy entity to the timer query. which should be fine because this is going to run immediately anyway, or right after the on update. Okay, so let's see. It's accepting guesses, and then in a little bit it should switch, to delete incoming guesses, and that's because the timer fired. Also, it did delete the guess timer entity. And in a few seconds it should go away, which it did. Okay. So I guess now we need to do the next part. Which again, probably what'll happen is like there's gonna be like animations and stuff that happen that slow down all these phases, but I'm not gonna worry about them too much for now because unlike more traditional phase handling, or game flow handling, I've found it's a lot easier to add in animations to the object-oriented approach because all you have to do is just change when these phase components are created and deleted, so I don't have to worry about it too much right now. So I'm just gonna have a structure for, I don't know, phase, I guess pick guess. Okay, so I'll add that here. So post update commands, add component, phase pick guess. Okay, so here we'll just need a system that will randomly pick one guess out of all the component system, or out of all the guesses that have been submitted. Okay, so let's, I don't know, I guess I can just call it the guess picker. Or let's call it like the featured guess picker, because there's one guess that will be featured every turn, so I think that's the best way to handle that. I guess this would be a system. And I don't really think I have anything to do with a job, because basically we'll just pick a guess entity and then tag it with something, and then some other system will take that and do with it as it will. This will just be a component system. Okay, so again, it's going to ask me to implement the abstract class, which is fine. Yeah, and I guess I'll need to override the onCreate because I'll need to set up queries. Okay, so first we're going to require a singleton, which will be that pick guess phase. Or what is it? Oh, I'm not using the namespace. So memory, game logic, for components. Okay. And what else? So I need to get a query of all guesses. So what happens if there's no guess? That's a good point. Actually, now that I think about it, maybe I'm going a little bit ahead. Probably the timer shouldn't start until we've received at least one guess. Okay, so how would I... Well, it's not really too difficult. So guess, and let's just say guess timer starter. Yeah, because really we should never go to the pick guess phase if we haven't received any guesses. That doesn't make any sense. So obviously the timer shouldn't start until we've received at least one guess. Okay, so what I have to do here, again, I don't think we're going to use jobs, so this will just be a component system. Okay, and so what I basically need to do here is I'll need to get a query for the tile guess, but I won't want to require that because we only want that to run if there's no timer. So again, that's kind of an interesting thing. There's not an easy way to do that, but I think it'll be fine. Okay, 1 second. Let me go turn on another light because it's getting kind of dark in here. Alright, I'm back. And again, I'm sorry about not having a webcam, but I just don't think I could program for 2 hours with all those lights in my face today. But let's... Okay, so yeah, I need a entity query. Or, yeah, I guess... Yeah, we'll need to have one for guesses, and then we'll need to have one for the timer. Okay. And for now, I'm pretty much going to just... Actually, it's difficult, yeah, because so this timer query, I'm going to need to actually set the data, and it's kind of difficult to do that if you're not doing it from a job. So maybe the best way... maybe... Okay, sorry, I can't think and talk apparently. So I was thinking that it's hard to set data to a component outside of a job, but we're gonna just be creating this entity, so I can just do it in a command buffer. So I think this will be okay. I'm just, yeah, in my head I'm thinking like every time we receive a guess, we might want to like increase the timer a little bit, but if that's the case, we can always add that functionality later. Let's see. So yeah, this will just be get entity query. Why is it not? Oh, because I changed the parent class there. Okay, so what do we want here? We basically just want... I guess we want a verified guess? Or do we... Yeah, because we need to have at least one verified guess in order to pick one to feature. Wait, this should be new. So we want all components. Component type, tile guess, and also verified. Okay, that's all. I guess I don't really need to have a component query just for that, but it's fine. And then yeah, we will require this for update because obviously we're not gonna If there's no guesses, we don't need to add the timer. And then the timer query equals get entity query new and not new, so just component type read only timer guess timer. And I guess this isn't read only because we're probably gonna set to it, but if it already exists, we're not gonna change it. So I guess this is fine. It's kind of a strange use. So yeah, if the timer query already contains objects in it, then we will just return. And I'm pretty sure, like, it has to calculate this entity count in order to figure out if it's gonna update usually. So I don't think I'm really adding any more like overhead to that. Okay, so do that, and then so now we know that there's no timers. So basically, if it runs now, that means that there is one guess. So I need to just create the timer entity. So there is another way we could do this, probably a cleaner way than pressing return here or calling return. We could create some component that would say that we're watching for a guess and then require that here, but I don't know, too many phase components makes it too complicated. I don't think this is gonna have too much overhead, so I'm okay with it. I guess this will only run when we're accepting guesses, so I can also require singleton. So it'd be phase, accepting guesses. Okay, so anyway, when do I want to... I guess this should run in the initialization system phase. Seems like I'm putting almost everything in there, but that's not a huge deal. This game is a little simpler, that I feel like we don't really have to have the initialization, simulation, presentation separation, but okay. So what? Yeah, so now I just need to create the timer entity and add that component, which I did in the board creator, so I can pretty much just move this into here. Okay, except now the start time, I do need to find that out, so I need to get a reference to the game state. And okay, and I obviously don't want to just create the entity right here because that's kind of slow. So I can either do it in the post update commands, or I can have it run at some other point and try to like pool these changes together. I mean, this isn't going to run very often, so I don't feel like it matters super much, because you pretty much just need to think about it for any entity that updates like every frame. Because if it doesn't update every frame, then it's not really going to affect performance too much, because the code won't run that often. So I think if we see it's an issue later, we can always change this. So we're gonna create an entity with this type. What does it? Okay, so post update commands is making me give it a archetype. I guess we don't want to be too messy here, so I'll go ahead and create the entity archetype. I'll call it the timer archetype. And let's just create. Oh right, entity manager, and then create archetype. Gosh, my fingers are having a difficult time, it seems like. Okay, so we'll pass that into here. Alright, and now post update command, set component data. Alright, I guess it wants the component type as an argument here. Is it not right? Does not contain a definition for set component. Maybe it's just set component. Yeah, they kind of need to standardize those function names, but whatever. Okay, now I can actually delete this because it can infer the type from the argument. And this would be states 0.at game time. So now we know it'll start running at the current game time, and then it will end 5 seconds later. Okay, so I think this is pretty much all I need to do. And I think this is fine. Yeah, again, just using the post update commands, it feels kind of wrong to me because like my optimization brain is thinking, well, this isn't the most efficient, but again, this is only going to be running like basically once every phase of the game, so it's not a huge deal. I don't need to worry about making it more complicated than it needs to be. Alright, I did forget. Okay. Yeah, I'm already seeing that this also needs the game time manager, so I'm already seeing it probably be useful to set up the initialization system group into several subgroups. Like one that runs after the time is updated and one that runs after phases are changed. So maybe we'll do that soon, but I want to try to pick a random guess before the end of the stream. Okay, so we have no guess right now, or no timer, so if I input a guess, yeah, then the guess timer is created, and after a while it is destroyed, and also we switch to pick guess and then also delete incoming messages. So let me see if that works. Well, I guess I don't really need to check because we've already tested that. Okay, but there is still a guess, which is our verified guess from earlier. So if I know that 0 and 4 is A1 and A2. So again, if I just type that, it doesn't override it, does it? No. Okay, so that's good. Okay, so that's good. Okay, so now the featured guest picker. We know that there's at least one guest because otherwise it wouldn't, the game wouldn't transition to this phase because the timer would never have started. So this query will, again, we're just gonna have to get guesses. Let's get entity query, and we'll only want verified guesses, which I guess is kind of like at this point, non-verified guesses are automatically destroyed, so I don't really know. I guess kind of a tautology now that all guesses will be verified, but we'll go ahead and pass that in. All right. So that's good to go. I guess I will go ahead and require this query. Require for update. Yeah, why not? And okay, so I think that's good. So now I will basically just look through this guess or this query and pick one. So I can do that. We'll get the number of guesses from the guess query and then just pick a random value out of that. So I'm going to need the random sequence for this. Alright, and so since I'm going to do that, I can only run this from a job because I need to make sure that the random number sequence is not being used when I use it. Let's see. Update and group. This will run in the simulation system group. And okay, so first I will need the random sequences. Which I can get from the game logic database. Okay, so again, since I can only run this from a job, and that's because if a job is using random number sequence, then it's going to put a hold on it, basically, the job handle. So, well, I guess technically you can use it from this frame. I'd have to do something like the random dependencies and then it's called complete on it. And what this would do is basically force the main thread, which is currently running this code, to wait for any other threads that are using, or any other jobs that are using the random sequence to complete before I can go any farther. I don't really want to do that because that does hold up the main thread, which would slow down the whole rest of the game. I mean, technically this would only run once, but I'm just gonna this doesn't feel right. And I don't think it's gonna be very difficult to do this in a job anyway, so. Alright, so all I have to do in order to make it work for jobs is just implement a slightly different onUpdate. Okay, so we'll still need that, and let's go ahead and write the job first. So pick, guess, job. Well, yeah, there's nothing to do in parallel, so I can just make it an iJob. So I guess what we'll do is we're gonna tag some guess. Okay, so public struct featured guess with this component. This component. And this is basically just signals that this is the guess that has been chosen to be revealed. Is that the way I want to? No, I don't think that's how I want to do it, actually. Yeah, I'm just thinking now because let's see if... Okay, I'll explain what I'm thinking, but instead of tagging a guess component to be featured, I'll have a separate component or a separate entity for this, but we don't want to like tag a specific guest because multiple users can pick the same tiles, and both any user that picks the same tile, if that's chosen to be featured, will be everybody will get points. So really we want to have it the guests only worry about the 2 tiles, and then later on we'll see which guesses have the same tiles as the featured guests. So what I actually need to do here is I need to find the number of guesses with unique tiles, which will be kind of interesting to do. Also, the guesses have A and B are flipped. Those are technically identical. I don't know if I checked for that in the tile guess verifier, did I? Okay, so basically I just checked if valid, and then if tile 1 did not equal tile 2. Okay, well that's fine, but I think what I might do here is sort the guesses so that tile 1 is always less than tile 2 in the index. So that way I don't have to worry about reversed orders. It's not that... Well, is it difficult? Because here I don't actually access the data for reading. I just... tag the entities. I mean, it's not really that difficult to do, but yeah, so here these duplicate filters only check to see if the user is the same, which is how I want to do it. Let's see, so basically, how can I do this? Okay, yeah, there's no way I can just... Because what's happening is I'm keeping the index of the tile guesses, and I don't ever actually change the data that's on the entities. So I'll need to have another thread to do that. And I guess I'd want to do it before I tag them. Well, it doesn't really matter. Okay, let's see. So I really only care about newly validated guesses. So it'd be any entity that's in the tag cube. I don't really keep track of that. Okay, so let me see here. So the sort, yeah, sorts the indexes. It's fine. Yeah, so I need to do another command buffer. Alright. Good. Do I want to just... Maybe I shouldn't worry about it here because, I mean, the system's already complex enough. And I feel like, although it'd be most efficient if I just looked and flipped them here, it might make... I don't have any way to actually do that easily without going in and inserting a new job. Which I think I could do it, but I mean, it also seems like that's not something for this system to do. Because the system basically just looks at guesses and then sees if they're valid and promotes them to be valid if they are and deletes the old ones. Okay. But anyway, that whole tangent is because I need to count the number of unique guesses, and if there's like 2 users and 1 guess, the tile 1 equals tile 2 and tile 2 equals tile 1, that would also not be a unique guess. So I think the only way that I can really do this is if I like compare every guess with every other guess. Which I guess is fine. If I'm gonna do that, then I can do that as a parallel job, I guess. Well, can I? Because since I have to compare every guess with every other guess, that could be a lot of guesses after a while. So maybe I should make this a job that runs during more than one frame. And to do that, I kind of have to decouple it from the system here. And I can just do that by not returning the dependencies from the job, which is fine. But of course I need to keep track of the job at some point so I can get data back from it. I've never done that kind of thing, so it might be interesting, but maybe also I'm thinking too hard about it. Okay, so this problem is bigger than I was thinking. Okay. I guess we can get started on it. I'm feeling a bit brain dead because, like I said, I'm already feeling a little under the weather. But yeah, so sorry if I'm kind of talking in circles right now, but I think we can kind of do a little bit here. Alright, so I'm not going to worry about when this job runs and how it runs just yet. I'm just going to worry about the actual algorithm to try and figure out unique jobs. So technically, yeah, we don't even need this yet. Private struct, find unique guesses job. Or I like to call it workers. And can this be in parallel? Because I'm trying to think. Technically, you could do it for each one. I guess it can. Let's see. The only thing I'm a little worried about is, like, if you, let's say, guess index 1 and 2 are equal, but you're going to check for both of them. But I guess how I'll make it work is I will only add it to, like, a unique list if guess A is unique, or it's the first of its kind in the list. So, like, let's see. Let's just say that guesses are one letter. So if we had a list like let's do this as a comment so it doesn't. A, B, C, A, D, something like that. Then obviously B, C, and D would all be unique. But then we'd also add the index for A because it's the first in the list. So even though the job will also run for index number, I guess this is 3 here, it won't add A to the list because there's a copy before it. Because we don't want to add duplicates, so that's kind of what I'm thinking about there. So only add items to the unique list if unique in the array, or let's say if one of a kind or the first item of its kind in the list. Okay, so first of all, I need to get an array list containing all of the tile guesses. So we'll have public, and this will be read only. No, that's not what I wanted to do. Oh yeah, the tags go before the public. Okay, that's what was wrong there. I think I used the C# version, not the Unity. Yeah, so this is the one I want. Public, native, array, tile guess. Okay, this will be guesses, and then we want to have some kind of list for all the unique values. And we don't know how long this will be, so I guess we could do a filter. So this could be I parallel for filter, and then we'll just return the index for guesses that have unique values. That's one way to do it, or we could create a structure. I think this is kind of how I'm guessing, so unique. Sorry, not guessing. This is kind of how I'm feeling, because we don't really care about the user or the timestamp value in the guesses. And if we're going to do that, then we would have a list. Okay, so I guess the question is here, can I add items to the list concurrently? I'm not sure if I can. Okay, it doesn't look like it, so I'd have to do it as a queue, I think. Oh, is there a way to do that? Let's see. Unity native list parallel writer. Okay, let's see here. They say native list allows parallel writing. The pattern is optimized for best performance. Okay, so it does allow parallel writing, because I didn't know if it did. Oh, there's one more really quick pattern, which is deferred conversion. Yeah, we know that. So if you can cast a native list native array. Okay, so I guess it just by default allows parallel writing, so it should be fine. Oh yeah, but I can't tag it as read-only because obviously we're going to be adding to it. So this will be unique guesses. Let's call this, I guess, submitted. And maybe I don't need to add guess to it because we know we're only working with guesses, so I'll just call that submitted and unique. Okay, so we're given the index in this array to search for, so we need to look through every other value. So I guess submitted dot index, because we're going to be looking into that a lot. 0 I less than submitted length. Yeah, so if I does not equal index, and then var the other equals submitted I. So if tile1 equals other dot tile1 and tile2 equals other tile2. Okay, or flip, so if the tile1 equals the other dot tile2. Okay, so I think those are the two options. So yeah, either tile1 and 2 are equal, or tile 1 is equal to tile 2 and vice versa. So that would mean that these two guesses are the same. Okay, so I guess if they're equal, we don't do anything. It's if they're not equal, then we would do something. Okay. How do I... I think I can do kind of smart little trick here to try to simplify this logic. So found match equals submitted dot length. Okay, and then here the found match would equal I, and then I can break. So if found match, or I guess let's do it this way, if index is less than found match, that means where the first item of its kind in the list, or the found match is greater than the length, which mean, or found match equals the length, which means that it's one of a kind, because index will never be greater than or equal the length. So I think that will work. And okay, so now what we'll do is just call unique, add L1 equals L1, and then L2 equals L2. And I guess at this point I could sort them if I wanted. I don't know if it really makes any difference, but just go with that. Okay, so supposedly I'm still a little leery about if you can actually add to the list in parallel, but we'll assume that you can. If you can't, I know a way to fix it. We'll just use a queue and then copy the queue into a list in a different job. It will work, but regardless, we'll get a reference to the native list here. So, and this will be a read only. So this will be unique guesses. And then we'll want a reference to the random sequence. Let's see. This is actually just a native array. So unity.mathematics random. Okay, so this will be pretty simple. We just pick the index, and I guess we'd have to create the command buffer, or not create the command buffer, but we'll create the entity. I don't really have to worry about doing currently. Okay, so int num guesses equals unique guesses length. So featured would be rand 0. Oh, I can't do it that way. Yeah, there's something. The way that the random works, you have to like pull it out of the native array, use it, and then set it back to make sure that it's being stored. Okay, so featured equals next integer number of guesses, and then we'll set the random value back into the array, so that way we'll persist its position in the sequence for any other threads that use it later. Okay, and then so the featured guess, I guess let's change this to featured index equals unique guesses featured index, and then we'll create the entity using the buffer. I guess I'll need to be past the archetype as well. So this can be read-only. So let's call it entity archetype. And then I just need to set the value. So buffer set component. What is it? Is it this featured guest? Okay. And then a tile. Oh, I probably want to change that, the naming there to match everything else. So tile 1 and then tile B equals featured guest dot tile 2. Why is it not like that? Featured guest does not contain a definition. Yeah, it's right here. Oh, it's uppercase featured guest. There we go. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and rename this to tile 1 and tile 2 just to match up. And again, if I wanted to, I could flip these around to make tile 1 always be less than tile 2, but I don't think it really matters. Okay. And I already know this can be burst compiled, so I'm going to go ahead and add it in. But the other job cannot because it uses a command buffer which isn't supported yet. Which is okay because we don't really do any logic in here besides find out this random index, so. Alright, and now I obviously have to hook up everything, but I'm just gonna throw new not our system, not implemented exception. That way that error will go away. Alright, and unfortunately we don't have time to actually test that code out, but like I said, my brain is starting to have had its fill of programming for today, so I think I'll go ahead and call it. But yeah, thanks everybody for coming by today, even without my webcam. I do appreciate it. Sorry it was a bit of a low energy stream today. Like I said, I'm just not feeling super good, but hopefully tomorrow I'll feel better. I am probably going to be late tomorrow because I have to go run an errand, so I don't think I'll be able to be home directly at 4, but hopefully it won't be too bad. And so I want to get to the tomorrow's gameplay. I'm still not sure what to call Tuesdays, but basically my plan is to work on like some single day project that's just some kind of fun like gameplay or level design idea. So I think tomorrow we'll probably make a very simple board game, so that should be fun. And then we'll get back to this on Wednesday. But again, thanks everybody for watching, and I'll put up some links in chat if you'd like to connect with me when I'm offline. I have a Discord and obviously YouTube and Twitter and other kinds of social media, so yeah, feel free to talk to me anywhere. I try to be on Discord most of the time, but even if I'm a little busy, I'll get back to you when I can. I think that's about it. So again, I hope you all have a great day, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.